G'day, guys and gal. Weapons are cool. If there's one thing I'm jealous of America for, and I mean literally just one thing, it's the fact that you guys can have weapons, most notably melee ones. In Australia, if I want a sword, it has to be in a sealed, locked case after I spend months getting vetted by the Swords Guild of Australia. This is probably for the best, as I likely would have accidentally circumcised myself with it by this point, but it's still a bit sad. Everyone knows that the bigger, deadlier, and more ornate a weapon becomes, the cooler it is. So it's no surprise that the Primarchs in Warhammer 40k have the coolest weapons around. Not all Primarch weapons were made equal, some are actually pretty trash, and the vast majority of them have been broken at some point or another. However, that doesn't make them any less cool. Before we get started, our quest to gain internet validation ego points continues. We are well on our way to clapping One Mind Syndicate, and progress has been strong, but I am wildly impatient, especially since it's been nearly 200 days of lockdown now, and I just need a reason to celebrate and shoot a shaken up bottle of champagne into my own face like the degenerate white guy I am. So if you like weapons or, eating food, then consider chucking me your subscription. You won't regret it. Probably. Today we're going to go over the lore of each of the Primarch's weapon or weapons. This will include every weapon they have ever used on more than one occasion. We will also discuss how powerful that weapon is and what ended up happening to it. Let's get into it. We're going to go legion by legion, hence the first Primarch on this list is Lionel Johnson, who is considered one of, if not the best duelist Primarch. Now whilst Mr. Johnson might be good with a sword, he isn't very original, hence his weapon of choice is a two-handed greatsword called, drumroll, the Lion Sword. Now sure, it wasn't a bad sword, it was sharp and ruined a lot of people's day, and if the lion wished it, it could also light you on fire, but it wasn't that special. It was made by some of the Emperor's unnamed blacksmiths, not the Emperor or another Primarch. The lion was old-fashioned and traditional. He didn't want to have a sword that was also a gun, that was also a teleporter, that was also a dildo. Although, as the saying goes, anything is a dildo if you're brave enough. Hence, he was content with a pretty basic sword. The sword would be broken, however, in the most pathetic of ways. When the lion was hunting Conrad and Ultramar, he committed some war crimes in order to draw him out. This enraged Guilliman, who grabbed the lion's sword and snapped it over his knee. Now this either says, wow, what a shit sword, or it says, wow, Primarchs have thick knees. Either way, the lion's sword was sent to the bench. It would be reforged and given back to the lion, who lost it when he was knocked into a coma by his asshole adoptive dad Luther. Currently, the sword is in the possession of Cypher, who never uses it, only stores it on his back until the day he can present it to the lion, or the emperor, or whatever he wants to do with it. On to the third Primarch, because the second one we know absolutely nothing about. We have Fulgrim, who originally wielded Fireblade, a flaming sword forged by Ferrus Manus, in what started off as a dick measuring contest between the two Primarchs, but ended up being a dick sucking contest. Now, unlike the Lion Sword, Fireblade was made by a very serious forge master, Ferrus, who could create objects of such wonder and magnificence. That was one of his Primarch powers after all. This sword would serve Fulgrim well until he discovered the seriously cursed but more powerful Leierblade. Fulgrim would use Fireblade against Ferrus when Ferrus refused to join Horus. However, Ferrus, being the blade's original master, was able to shatter it with his metal hands. Ferrus would then reforge Fireblade and use it to try kill Fulgrim during the Isfahan Dropsite massacre. This blade gave Fulgrim a huge power buff in strength and durability at the cost of his own sanity. This was the blade that cut off Ferrus's head. When the demon took over Fulgrim, the Leierblade was not as powerful anymore, hence Fulgrim replaced it with the new better swords and gave the Leierblade to Lucius. Fuck you, Lucius, ugly bitch. Next up, we have the fourth Primarch, Perturabo, and his weapon, or should I say weapons. See, Perty wasn't really one to use melee weapons. He was autistic, sure, but he wasn't retarded. He relied more on artillery and high-powered range weapons. But this is Warhammer! He couldn't avoid having a cool weapon forever, hence he ended up with Forgebreaker, the weapon that Fulgrim originally made for Ferrus when Ferrus made him Fireblade. After Ferrus was dead and Fulgrim had moved on to way more demonic weapons, Perty was gifted Forgebreaker, which was said to be able to level mountains. Obviously that's not true. The mental image of someone killing a mountain with a warhammer then said mountain exploding is retarded. It's a very powerful weapon, being favoured by Ferrus for his entire life, who as we've established can make god tier weapons. Perturabo still presumably has the weapon and uses it to scratch his balls or whatever he's been doing for the last 10,000 years. Onwards and upwards to Primarch number 5, Jagadai Khan, and his Swiftblade, the White Tiger Dao, because, you know, Jagadai is Asian. Now, out of all the Primarch weapons, the Chow Blade has the least amount of lore to it. It was likely forged by the Emperor's armorers, or maybe even Jagadai himself. It suited him well and has never failed him, so there's that. Primarch Numul Sax is Leman Russ, who has a fair amount of weapons in his time. Firstly, he had Kraken Maw, which was a fat frostblade forged with the teeth of a kraken, who must have had a seriously high level of calcium if you're able to make a sword out of his teeth. Obviously not enough though, as during a fight with Angron, Kraken Maw was broken. Leman replaced Kraken Maw with Mjolnir, the Sword of Bale Knight, an ancient sword taken from a fallen tyrant. It was more or less Frostmourne, except instead of the wielder being the little privileged bitch boy Arthas, it was Leman who can outclap a curse on the daily. He also wielded the axe of Hellwinter, which once again was forged with Kraken teeth. Poor Kraken, he just wants to have a full smile and Leman just keeps on coming in and cracking his teeth. But it had a disruptor field put in it, so when he hit something, the impact was massive. Volkod also created a mastercraft bolter for Leman called Scorn Spitter as a sign of their friendship. Finally, Russ also used the spear created by the Emperor's psychic might. It was powerful enough that Leman was able to beat Horus in a duel with it, despite Horus being jacked as shit with Chaos Kool-Aid. However, Leman hated using it, and once threw it so far away that it took days for the Space Wolves to find it. It's not very clear where all Leman's gear is at the moment. Maybe he's hauling it through the Eye of Terror and ruining Chaos's day. On to number 7, we have the Chainsword of Dawn, Storm's Teeth, forged by the weapon masters of Dawn's home planet when even before the Emperor arrived. This impractical weapon is gnarly as fuck. You would have thought that using the equivalent of an ornate chainsaw as a genuine weapon in the far future would be considered pretty retarded. Well, you thought wrong, as Storm's Teeth was powerful enough to easily cut through Alpharius' Primarch armor and then end his life. Rogel also carries the Voice of Terror, which is a bolter crafted by the Custodes for Dawn, to show him honor. It's unclear where either of these weapons are now, but Dawn probably still has them, wherever the fuck he is. 8 gives us everyone's least favourite emo edgelord, Conrad Curse and his lightning claws, mercy and forgiveness. Now fortunately Conrad wasn't the one that gave them these stupid names, it was his tryhard edgelord sons, but his throwing knives were called the Widowmakers, so we can't really give him too much credit there. It's unknown where they came from, but they weren't very special as the Lion was able to break them using his Lion Sword, which wasn't a very special sword. Then when Conrad got captured, the claws were taken from him again. Once he escaped, he built shitty replicas of them to wear until he was assassinated / committed assisted suicide. Number 9, we have the glorious Hawkboy Sanguinius who can do no wrong. He wields, or wielded before his tragic death at the hands of the evil bold asshole, both the Spear of Telesto as well as the Blade and Kermarmine. Yeah, close enough. The blade was an extremely powerful power sword that was gene-coded to only be functional when in the hands of a Blood Angel. It was given to the Blood Angels by Sanguinius and was passed down warrior to warrior. Eventually one of these warriors lost it and had to trade his soul to Titsnitch in order to get it back. Rough. The Spear of Telesto was also gene-coded and could shoot out hectic laser beams that raped anyone who wasn't a Blood Angel. This spear was lost upon Sanguinius' death but was later recovered in Orc territory. Halfway there, the 10th Primarch is Ferrus Manus, who as we've discussed, wielded Forgebreaker. The weapon made by Fulgrim, who as well as being a flamboyant dickhead, was also a master blacksmith apparently. Not just a pretty face, eh? Now out of all the Primarch weapons, this one was used by the most amount of people. Ferrus, Fulgrim and Perturabo have all squashed some skulls with it, and it remains a serious hitty stick. However, Ferrus's real weapons were his hands. Living Necron metal coated them. To put into perspective how much of a weapon these hands were, just imagine getting punched in the face. Ouch. Now imagine you're getting punched in the face by a Primarch. Ouchie. Now imagine you're getting punched in the face by one of the strongest Primarchs who also happens to have metal hands. Ouchie mama. You would not catch these hands. The 11th Primarch is unknown, but probably just used nunchucks that circumcise you with a single touch. Primarch 12 is the Angry Angeron who has wielded even more weapons than Leman, most notably a number of axes. His first axe was called Widowmaker, as it was only effective when used on married men. In all seriousness, why the fuck do half the weapons in fantasy settings have the name Widowmaker? It's not even that cool of a name. See, if I had a spiky club called, like, Childfucker, then my enemies would be way more intimidated than if I called it Widowmaker. This axe was broken by Lehman during the two brothers fight I mentioned earlier. After Widowmaker, Angron used a massive battle axe called Brazen Tooth, which while it was an incredibly effective weapon, Angron got sick of it and gave it to Lorgar as a sign of their brotherhood. After Brazen Tooth, Angron used dual axes called Gorefather and Gorechild, which out of all the weapon names so far, has to be the best in my opinion. They were made with dragon's teeth and adamantium. Badass. When Angron got crushed by a falling building, he dug his way out using the twin axes, damaging them in the process. He discarded them as trash, however Khan retrieved Gorechild and had it restored, and he still uses it to this day. Angron would then be given the Black Blade, a huge sword made for him when he became a Demon Prince of Khorne. This sword would be broken by a rookie Grey Knight during the War of Armageddon because Grey Knights are a solution to every problem. Guilliman is the 13th Primarch, and despite his superpower being maths, he still enjoyed a good scrap, hence wielded the Gladius Incandor and the Hand of Dominion. The Gladius was a solid power sword and the Hand of Dominion was a solid power fist. He also used a custom-made combi bolter called the Arbitrator. Post his resurrection, Guilliman has had a bit of a buff. He now wields the Emperor's Flaming Sword, one of the only things in existence that can permakill demons, as well as a vastly upgraded Hand of Dominion that has a built-in bolter for that extra dakka. The smelly Grim Reaper Mortarion is the 14th Primarch, and he wields a massive war scythe called Silence. It is called this because it isn't very talkative, and if you get killed by it, then you will be silent. Yes, it is one of the most powerful Primarch weapons, as it is seemingly of Xeno origin, rumoured to be the old weapon of Mortarion's evil adoptive Necro Daddy that the Emperor killed. When Mortarion got raped by Nurgle and unconsensually joined Chaos, Silence became possessed by a demon and became even more powerful. Let's just say, if this thing cuts you, you better hope you got your tetanus shot. Morty also carried around a gun called the Lantern, which was taken from wackos that worship dragons. 15 is Magnus, whose main weapon was his warp spaghetti. His weapons weren't so as much forged rather than conjured, however he did wield the blade of Anul-Nurra, which was made with a combination of Magnus's magical wank as well as good old fashioned imperial smithing. Magnus also carried the Sci-Fi Serpentar, which was a plasma gun that was either forged for Magnus or it was just something that Magnus summoned when he wanted to shoot magic death balls without looking like he was shooting magic death balls. When Magnus became corrupted by Chaos after doing something very wrong, his sword, being an extension of himself, was also corrupted by Chaos, and also his ego, as he changed its name to the Blade of Magnus. If you get cut with the Blade of Magnus, you're gonna have a shit one, as you either explode or turn into a Chaos Spawn. Nice. On to number 16, we have the big bad bold man himself, Horus. Before he was War Master, Horus had some of the most boring weapons, like some random power sword or something. Later, he found the War Master's Talon deep within Chthoniya, which was a unique and powerful lightning claw. When he became the War Master, the Emperor gave him a fuck-off massive maul called the Worldbreaker, that the Biggie had forged himself. Now Horus wielded both of these weapons to great effect until his death. The War Master's talons were taken by Abaddon and have been used by him ever since, and the Worldbreaker was given to the Horus clone. When Abaddon fought the Horus clone, he shattered Worldbreaker somehow, and then he killed the clone using the talons, 'cause reasons. 17 gives us everyone's least favourite pedophile, Lorgar. Lorgar was a bit of a Horus wannabe, hence he also had a big ass mace maul thingo. Ironically, despite being the worst Primarch at combat, he had one of the best weapons, as his mace, called the Illuminarium, was forged by Ferrus Manus, who as we've established, was level 99 in blacksmithing. He also carried an ancient Arotech pistol. Primarch 18 is Vulcan, who along with Ferrus was the best Primarch when it came to forging slick ass gear. He was the best Primarch at everything to be honest, other than flying. That title went to Sanguinius. Hence Vulcan wielded Dawnbringer, a massive warhammer of his own design that could smash through anything, and also had a handy little teleporter in it that could cover millions of kilometers, allowing him instant planet-to-planet transport. He also carried a legendary plasma pistol called Furnace Heart made by Ferrus, but he didn't use it, as ranged combat is for pussies. Primarch 19 is Corvus Corax, who alongside Conrad used lightning talons. He did not limit himself there however, as he also used dual pistols, grenades and a lightning whip for when shit needed that extra level of kink. His main weapon, if you can call it that, had to be his mechanical wings, however they were so advanced that barely anyone knew how they worked, and they could not be replicated. Finally, number 20, Alpharius Omegan. Both twins use matching weapons and armour, their weapon of choice being a special modified Necron spear called the Pale Spear. This spear could phase in and out of reality, allowing it to pierce any physical armor with ease and doing massive damage to whoever ate the attack, unless their name was Rogal Dawn, in which case the Pale Spear became a bit of a liability. It's unclear if there are 2 Pale Spears, one for each twin, or if they just share the one. It's even more unclear what ended up happening to the Pale Spear once Alpharis got diced up into Tsushimi, but it's probably just gathering dust somewhere in the Imperial Palace. And there you have it, all the weapons used by the Primarchs in Warhammer 40k. Not all Primarch weapons were made equal, but I can say with confidence that even copying a nick from one of these would turn you into an absolute mess. And that does us for today, guys. If you enjoyed the video and want to support the channel, then Patreon is the place to be, where only $1 per month gives you access to a boatload of Warhammer hentai with more on the way. The Majorkill mini still has 20 models in stock, so if you want to get a master-crafted custom mini for your armies, then that's where you go. Hit the subscribe button, then hit the real subscribe button for more painful content. Join the Discord for more memes, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.